All right, we are back here on the Ourlads Football YouTube channel for another scouting video as we take a look at the Big 12 offensive players to watch, especially for potential 2025 NFL draft picks. So we're going to go through our top scouts' favorite players that they want to keep an eye on. Again, most likely these are guys that they feel might have an impact for the 2025 draft and beyond. And of course, that also includes the potential of, hey, just players that are going to have really good seasons in the Big 12 and the type of players that you want to keep an eye on. All right. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you enjoy these videos, because this is the Big 12 and we've already completed the Pac-12, the Big 10, the SEC, the ACC, actually not the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 and the remaining independent teams, we still got to figure out how to add those teams to the list. But this is the last of the four power conferences, and Power 5, of course. I guess they don't call it Power 5 anymore, do they, Hayden?
Guess it's the Power 4 now.
Yeah, I guess so. The Power 4 plus. And unfortunately, it's the way it is. I guess next year or in coming years, I guess the Pac-12's idea is to go out and maybe try to get some of those really good Mountain West Conference teams, things, and we'll see how that works out. But yeah, for the most part, it is what it is. It still should be a very entertaining season. And for Big 12 football fans, we're going to do our best here to spotlight some of the key players to watch for 2025 on offense. Defense is coming up in 2 weeks. Of course, we're not going to be on the air next week for 4th of July holiday week. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk defense. But we have John Cooper joining us once again. He's been AWOL for the last few weeks. How's it going, John?
Good.
And Hayden, good to have you back. So Big 12 football is ready to go. Also want to remind everybody that this is the 2023 review guide, the 2024 review guide. Then when we talk, I promise you in 2 weeks, I will have the 2024 review guide in my hands. But this is the 2023 guide, so don't forget to order it at ourlads.com. And if you haven't already picked up one of these, the draft guide, still, this is very relevant. All of the players across the country that were drafted, even players that weren't drafted, key free agents, signed right here. All the scouting reports that you want from all those players for your teams and the other teams that you may not root for, but still you want to find out what to look for, especially if you're a fantasy football fan, a dynasty football fan. Still a lot of those rookie drafts happening between now and August. And we actually talked a little fantasy football with Jared Smola from Draft Sharks just about a week ago. So that video is also available here on the channel. Okay, let's get started. And since you've been away for the past couple of weeks, John, we're going to get started with you. And we're going to talk quarterbacks first of all. And there are two quarterbacks that I know you want to talk about. One, pretty much, this is a known quantity. And especially this year with all the star quarterbacks drafted, it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of a spotlight is shown on Shedeur Sanders. The second quarterback, we're going to hold off for just a minute. But this is a guy that most people, unless you're a scout or big time college football fan, they don't really know too much about this guy. But let's start with Sanders. What kind of a quarterback do you think he could become in the NFL? What is his? What are the biggest strengths that he possesses right now?
Well, he's got all the tools as far as athletic ability. He's still got some things to work on, obviously, but he's a very instinctive player. Obviously, the great athlete, comes from good stock. The son of Deion Sanders, his coach now. He put up some excellent numbers at Colorado. He's very accurate passer, very good with the intermediate range balls to outside the numbers, which is critical for an NFL quarterback. He's shown the ability to be a clutch player and late in the game. As a quarterback, he can read coverages. He's very good at reading the field and finding open receivers in short windows. He's got excellent arm talent. He's very mobile. He can make every throw that's required of an NFL quarterback. Obviously, the question will come, okay, 4-8 season, right? All the tools, how come they didn't win more games? Well, some of that, was the response of Sanders to some of the things that happened, but his offensive line wasn't the best. He played under a lot of pressure, and he didn't always respond. He needs to be more composed, and he needs to be more willing to use his feet to create plays. He has the ability to do that. He's shown that he can do that, but sometimes he takes unnecessary sacks. He gets pressured, and he'll hold on to the football too long. He's a pretty good anticipation thrower, and he sometimes maybe waits a little too long for that break instead of throwing a guy open. Those are just a couple of little weaknesses. But, the arm talent that he's got, and the velocity and the way the way he drives balls in the tight windows is what you look for in an NFL passer. He's got a very good deep arm. He can put the ball out in front. He can put the ball in that bucket and the deep ball, dropping it in there. And he's very, very, very accurate thrower. And the tools are there. We looked at him last year at the beginning of the season. Dan Shanka and I talked about him quite a bit, and we had him, right there in the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks if he would have come out last year. So, we see a guy that, unless something changes dramatically, is going to be a first-round pick, and very likely a top 10 pick. He's very good. He's got a great football IQ. He can identify weaknesses both pre and post snap, and we really like that about him. But as I said, gets a little jittery in the pocket. Got to get a little bit better in the pocket. Those are some things he has to work on.
So what about his tools, though? Because it sounds like the main weaknesses that you pointed out were things that could be controlled if the line's better, and maybe if the line's better, maybe he'll be more relaxed as well. So what about his tools? What's limiting him from being maybe a really top elite prospect?
Well, just what I said. I mean, he's got some weaknesses. His physical skills. He's got what you want physical skill wise.
He's got everything. He's got everything you're looking for.
Yeah, he's got everything you look for there. He makes all the throws. He's got arm talent. He's mobile. He needs to use those skills a little bit better, is what I'm saying. There's a time to take off and run instead of stand in there and take a sack or get pressured. And he needs to be able to create a little bit better. I mean, we talk about Caleb Williams last year, sometimes taking off and running when maybe he should have tried to get the ball in a window. And Sanders has the opposite problem. He has the ability to create and doesn't always do that, especially with that line. He should have been. We feel that he should have done that maybe a little bit more, a little bit too jittery in the pocket sometimes. But this is a talented player, and we think he will continue to progress. He will continue to get better. And as it was, he put up very good numbers on a 4-8 team.
Yeah, numbers are awesome. But yeah, in today's day and age, we all know that everybody wants those quarterbacks to have some mobility. And if you don't have the athletic ability, then like you said, you have to have a good feel for the pocket and know exactly how to avoid the rush, make plays when you have to make plays when they break down. So sounds like those are the things that he has to improve upon.
Well, and let's go back to C.J. Stroud. That was the same thing said about him. He has the ability, the athletic ability, didn't use it. He wanted to stand in the pocket and he would take unnecessary hits sometimes. But we see the same kind of player, in a lot of ways. Very good athlete, and we think, there's some things that have to be corrected footwork-wise, in terms of especially under pressure, but talented, Pro Bowl caliber player in our minds.
Yeah, and look what happened to Stroud. It's funny because Stroud, the light didn't seem to turn on until the playoff game against Georgia. And then I just remember those Buckeye fans at the time going, after they lost the game, now you wait until the last game of your career to show us this. We've been waiting for this against Michigan back-to-back years. We've been waiting for this. And he showed it in the big playoff game. And now, of course, we know what happened to him last year. Okay.
We were CJ fans all along. We never backed off of CJ. If you go back and look at Dan and I and how we handle the quarterbacks, we were CJ fans.
All right. Well, we have 2 quarterbacks apiece from both you guys, so we're going to split them up. Hayden, let's bring you in and talk about Noah Fafita out of Arizona, because I did a show, of course, all last year. We're going to do it again this year with Mark Lawrence, one of the top handicappers in the industry. A bunch of teams that we usually each year we're high on, we're critical of, and this was a team, Arizona, that we just loved to see the progress. It's unfortunate that Jed Fish is gone, but they have themselves a special-looking quarterback.
No doubt about that. And I know that we make this comment every single episode, but I had to go and check all the Big 12 teams and see who the new additions were. Totally forgot about Arizona. being one of those new additions coming over from the Pac-12. As soon as I saw their name, I knew I had to talk about Noah Fifita. He was one of my favorite players in college football last season. Just to give a little bit of context about him, he started the season off as the backup in 2023, ended up taking over as the starter in Week 5 and never, ever looked back. He was just a redshirt freshman this past season. He was named the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. He had the highest completion percentage in a season in school history, and he led the team to 7 straight wins to end the season. It really can't be overstated the impact that he made on Arizona's program last year. Alongside I'm going to pronounce it Tetaroa McMillan, I believe is how it's pronounced. With him returning as well, the duo of.
You want to say that again?
Yeah, say it 100 times, right? Tetaroa, I believe that's how it's pronounced. McMillan.
I think that is. I'll use that when it comes.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. It's a tongue twister for sure. But with him and Fifita coming back, they're going to be one of the best, if not the best, quarterback wide receiver duos in the country. One of the major problems, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more later, he's 5'10", 194 pounds. He's undoubtedly going to be one of the smallest legitimate quarterback prospects of all time, at least if you're looking at the NFL level. Now, I think it's a little too early to call him, say he's an athlete just because of some of the things that he does as a passer. While he is small in stature, he does have a really good arm. He can make passes downfield seamlessly, set his receivers up for yards after the catch. He's accurate at all 3 levels. I found it interesting just watching, or at least looking at the stats, I should say, and then watching the tape as well, how little he ran the ball because he's such a good athlete. He made some great throws on the runs, but his rushing stats were just really minuscule in 2023. It wasn't just because of the sacks. They just didn't run him a whole lot, which I was a little confused about, but just made a ton of jaw-dropping plays throughout the season. Now, in terms as a passer, still had a few occasional misses. He's a redshirt freshman. He's going to continue to develop, and his ball placement was off at times, at all 3 levels. And as we said, there's very few quarterbacks at his size that have ever been successful in the NFL. He's definitely going to have an upfield battle. For example, Bryce Young, I believe he's sitting at 205 pounds, and we considered him to be one of the smallest quarterbacks of all time. Now you're looking at someone who could be, 10 pounds smaller. It's going to be a challenge for sure. But regardless, if you're looking for an entertaining dual threat quarterback who could be a dark horse for the Heisman Trophy this year, Fifita is going to be your guy.
Well, the good thing is he's got a couple of years to gain 10 pounds. And I certainly hope that's more than enough time to put on some weight and be put in a nice program there. So, they're going to be an exciting team to watch. And you mentioned the receiver. They got a good running back. This is still going to be a fun team to keep an eye on. All right. Let's now go back to John, because, John, you have one of my you talk about a dark horse Heisman candidate. Well, I believe Jalon Daniels is a dark horse Heisman candidate. Just loved what the kid did. How could you not? How could you not love what happened with that program when he broke out in 2022? Lance Leipold, his first season, it was just a magical season. And you just felt after the great start he had in 2023 that it was going to be just maybe even in another credible season for that football program. Unfortunately, he got hurt after 3 games. They still won a lot of games, but they could have been even that much better with Daniels. So what kind of a player do you think Daniels could be at the next level?
Well, he's a dual threat type of guy who can do it with both his legs and his arm. He's not real big. He's 6 foot, about 215 pounds, and he's got to stay healthy. But the thing about him is he's a creator. He's got tremendous ability to create when nothing is there, and he's kind of electric in terms of how he plays. He's a very aggressive player. He'll put the ball downfield. He'll move around in the pocket, and he will attack. Very strong arm. You think a 6 foot tall guy wouldn't be that strong, but he can get the ball downfield, and he's got very good lower body movement normally when he releases the football. His mechanics are very good. He's very good at reading the pocket. He can beat coverage. He can throw guys open against man-to-man with a quick release, and that's something that I like. I like to call him a guy that's quicker than fast as far as a runner. He's got great agility in traffic. He can make people miss in space. And he's kind of what you would call a gamer. I go back to my age, Bobby Lane type of a player. He makes the plays in clutch situations. He's not the greatest pocket passer. Let's be honest. That's not his strength. Major room for improvement. He tends to drift in the pocket. If he's got a clean pocket, he doesn't stay in it all the time. And, he tends to get nervous feet sometimes. And when he's on the move and when he's got those nervous feet, his velocity and his lower body mechanics suffer, in watching him play. So, yeah, as a scout, there's some definite things that, we can look at that he's got to work on. As far as being an NFL player, he didn't play in an offense that, emphasizes, read progressions. So, that's going to be something that he'll have to learn, as far as being able to read the entire field and get those 1, 2, 3 progressions that NFL coaches really want their quarterbacks to be able to do. That said, he is, as I said, a gamer. He's a tremendous athlete. And like you said, 2022 season was kind of magical for Kansas, and he was a huge, huge part of that. So this is a kid, if he comes back healthy and can play at the same level that he played in 2022, I think, you're going to have a great player. Remember, that injury, he's got to protect himself, I think, a little bit better. He also missed some games in 2022, not as many as last year. But, he's had some injury issues, and some of that may be, because of the way he plays, his very aggressive style. But, boy, he's fun to watch. He's fun to watch him make plays, and fun to watch him make people miss in space, fun to watch him make plays out of nothing.
Yeah, that's why I think he's got a shot to be I think he already is a legitimate dark horse Heisman candidate because he can make those magical plays. And the Big 12 is right now wide open. Without Texas and Oklahoma, wide open. And what a story that could be if Kansas can find themselves in the Big 12 championship game this year. And I see no reason why they can't at least be right there at the end. So he'll be the main reason if they can get that done. As we switch over to Hayden for his second quarterback, Hayden, you talked about size issues for Noah Fafita. No such size issues for KJ Jefferson, the transfer from Arkansas over to Central Florida. And the question, though, is because we started to see a progression in 2022. I mean, 21 was a fantastic season. 22 was even better. But then last year, things just got really messy. And I know he wasn't 100% healthy either. It was just not good. So now he transfers. So the big questions about what kind of a player KJ Jefferson is going to be this year and whether or not, he's got the ability to be a player at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head just in terms of his production from this past season. In 2023, definitely took a hit, was less productive than he has been in the last 2 seasons. And I think because of that, his signing kind of went under the radar. I remember hearing about it and thinking, wow, that's a heck of a signing for UCF, and didn't really hear anything more about it. And I was really wondering why. But you look at some of the players that transferred to different universities during this offseason, Jefferson has a chance to be one of the best and most productive signings of all players from the portal. For a team entering their second season of Big 12 play, they, in my opinion, hit a home run signing with an experienced quarterback. He's got loads of SEC play, successful SEC play, and I think he can do a really good job there at UCF. He was not only an efficient starter during his first 3 seasons with the Razorbacks, he shattered almost every single passing record that they own, and they have a history of some really good quarterbacks at Arkansas. It's not like he's the only one. As you talked about, there's definitely no size concerns with him. He's 6'3", 247 pounds. He's just certainly a challenge to stop on the run. He's not just going to be a quarterback who sits back in the pocket. He rushed for nearly 1,900 yards and 21 touchdowns in his career. And you're talking about a quarterback who's almost 250 pounds. He's running at you like a freight train. So you better watch out. But as I've said in previous live streams, in terms of the quarterback position, I don't know that you necessarily can't teach it, but it's really hard to teach a quarterback to be tough. In my opinion, he's either got it or he doesn't. It's hard to teach him how to be tough. KJ Jefferson is tough. He's willing to take a hit in the pocket. You can see his poise and his experience in his play as he goes through his progressions. He's got a big arm. He can fit the ball into tight windows. He made some impressive throws towards the sideline. I know Coach Coop talked about how important that is when he was talking about Shedeur Sanders earlier. Still some misses on tape you want to see him make, especially some overthrows. But for a team in need of a quarterback, like I said, I feel like Gus Malzahn and his staff hit a slam dunk signing with Jefferson. I think he's going to make their transition in year 2 to the Big 12 that much smoother.
And he's got that size, like you said, and toughness that pro scouts are going to love. And I'm going to say, again, starter, I don't know, but you never know. I mean, he's going to at least be a nice little add-on to a team at the next level. Hopefully he shows that progression this year that we're looking for. I just wanted to throw in some other quarterbacks to keep an eye on in the Big 12 before we move on. Garrick Green from West Virginia is an interesting player. I don't really know whether or not he's going to be a professional player. His completion percentage, his accuracy, really not very good, but he's a very good college quarterback, very good athlete. And this could be a really good year for West Virginia, a really good year for Green. So he's interesting. I think people should keep an eye on him. But maybe, and I want to ask you, John, about just quickly whether or not you think Cameron Rising. What are you looking for from Cameron Rising after being injured last year? He really started to take off. 2022 was a monster season for the program. He was out all last year. Do you look at him and you say, yeah, this is a guy that I think could be drafted, developed, and make a team? Or do you see anything more than that?
I think what you said is accurate. We had him on our list last year as a potential draftable player down the line. We kind of liked him. And, he's a good-sized kid, 6'2", 220, if I'm not mistaken. And he's got good arm strength. He does a lot of things very well. Missing last season, obviously hurt. So you're going to have to take a look and see. But I wouldn't count him out. I think he, my recall of him last year is he was a guy that we thought was draftable, going into the season. Obviously, he was not a part of the draft last year and didn't play. But he's a prospect.
Yeah, and by the way, Utah, we know how good they've been in the Pac-12 the last few years. They're coming to a new conference, but Utah could actually be the team to beat in the Big 12 this year. And we're going to talk about another team that could be a team to beat in just a sec. Just want to run off some other quarterbacks to keep an eye on. Iowa State, third-year sophomore Rocco Becht. Keep an eye on Josh Hoover, the third-year sophomore from TCU. Beren Morton from Texas Tech. Donovan Smith's a big dude. Texas Tech transfer, had a pretty decent season for Houston. Still has a ways to go, but an interesting player. And then the last player on the list is gonna segue me over to you, John, at running back, because they're on the same team. Alan Bowman, 7th year in college football. Yes, believe it or not, he's coming back again. He was with Michigan for a couple of years, just holding the clipboard as a third stringer. Got an opportunity to play last year for Oklahoma State, coming back again this year. I don't know whether or not he has what it takes to be a second or third string quarterback the next level, but he's going to be a big part of whether Oklahoma State is competitive this year, as is your top running back that you want to talk about, and that's Ollie Gordon III, who so far looks like the real goods. I mean, this kid is an exciting player. If he played for Oklahoma, we'd probably know more about him. This could be a big year for him, speaking of potential Heisman candidates.
Yeah, Ollie Gordon, of course, the name Ollie was a great name for a running back, in my opinion, because Ollie Matson was one of the greatest. Dating myself, apologize, but I had to get that in there. But this kid, the thing I like about him, he's one of those guys who can break your ankle with cuts. He is very quick at the hole. He's patient at the hole. Once it comes time to pick it, he can accelerate through. And when he gets to the second level, look out. He can cut back. He can make people miss in space. His agility in traffic is incredible. He doesn't have breakaway speed necessarily. He's what we would call, again, more quick than fast. But he does flash an extra gear out of a cut. Some people will nitpick him on that. I won't, because, I love the way this kid plays. I love the way he runs. He's got contact balance. He can take a hit, and he can keep on moving. He can slide off of hits, and he can make those hits not be so much of a deal because of his agility and quickness. The other thing is he's a tremendous receiver. He's a big kid, reasonably big kid, 6'2", 216, and he's got very good size for a receiver. Good catch radius. He makes great run after catch. He runs good routes. He runs those text routes out of the backfield. And any kind of quick screens or anything like that, he's really good. He's a 3-down player, in my opinion. And I really like him as a running back. Some people I think when you get to talking about him, people are going to be concerned about that speed. But like I said, he flashes that extra gear, and his quickness and acceleration in and out of breaks is tremendous. So he's first-round talent, in my opinion.
Is the speed going to keep him away from being like a top 10 pick?
Yeah, probably. Running backs are rarely top 10 picks. I mean, he's not Saquon Barkley or, that caliber of player. But I can see, if somebody's looking for a running back, he might be the top running back in this draft.
Okay.
I may be wrong about that one, and I haven't looked at everybody to know. It's just that he's the kind of player I like.
Yeah, he's definitely up there. We're going to get back with your second running back. But first, Hayden, you've got another Central Florida dude that you want to talk about, RJ Harvey.
Yeah, Central Florida is going to have a heck of a backfield this season, starting with we talked about KJ Jefferson already coming on over, and RJ Harvey, who doesn't get a lot of love either. He was a player who, with the current state of college football, a lot of players, if they don't play in their first few seasons, end up transferring out. He's someone that waited his turn. His first 3 seasons consisted mostly of special teams, and he missed the entire 2021 season with an injury. In 2022, finally got his shot. He had 3 starts. He made appearances in 13 games with plenty of flashes. And then in 2023, he finally, his 5th season with the program, took over as the feature back and never looked back. His production was, some of the best in college football this past season. Starting in October, he went on a total rampage. He had 5 straight games of 100-plus yards rushing and 7 of 8 games overall to end the season. He scored 16 touchdowns throughout the season. He scored 10 touchdowns across 4 games in November, 10 touchdowns in a 4-game span. And like I said, with KJ Jefferson coming over, the running game is going to be much more of a focal point of their offense this year. But some things that I really liked about him, he's nimble on his feet. He's got impressive burst when hitting his gap. His speed in the open field is also really impressive. He's able to break away from defenders at the 2nd and the 3rd level. I would guess next spring, I don't like to make projections this early. We're talking about making projections in June. I would at least project that we'll be talking about him as like an early day 3 pick. Could certainly be higher just based off the season he had. But let's see how he performs this season with another year of experience under his belt.
All right. And then we have one more running back that John wants to get in there. And why not go back to Kansas? Daniels was quarterback number 2 for you, John. Well, running back number 2 for you is also from Kansas. Once again, this is why we think Kansas could be a really very fun team to watch once again this year with Devin Neal in the backfield.
Yeah, Devin Neal is, highly productive for, you look at his 3-season consistency. He, 3,077 yards and 33 touchdowns and about 500 receiving yards over that period. He's 5'11", 210. He's got a little bit of a lean frame. He plays with a lot of energy. His vision to pick the hole is tremendous. He can play in any scheme. They do a lot of things as far as the run game at Kansas, and he's a really good fit for what they do. Precise jump cuts, his acceleration at the hole. He's very patient, but when he sees it, he accelerates. And he can accelerate. He can change speeds. He can make people miss with that little, what I call a limp leg, stop-start quickness. And he's a very good receiver. Dual threat. He makes people miss in space, whether it's after the catch or when he hits the hole and breaks into the open field. Very good at processing, what he sees in front of him and avoiding contact, in terms of and keeping his nose going upfield at the same time. He's not going to be a power back. He's not going to be a great short yardage back. He's not going to break tackles. He's going to make people miss rather than break a tackle. He's not the most powerful player in the world, and that's going to be, a negative for some people as far as a running back is concerned. But, I love the patience. I love the way he slides and picks the hole, where he sets up his offensive lineman and plays in space. It can get to the 2nd level. The vision is tremendous. He can see almost like, I'd say his peripheral vision, his big eyes are outstanding. His ability to see that cutback lane, 2 or 3 linemen down the line and find that little crease and get through it. And that, takes care of a lot of that, maybe that lack of power, as far as that goes. But he does have good contact balance. He can stay on his feet when he gets hit. And, but again, the strength is his elusiveness. Solid football player. Good receiver too.
Yeah, that's going to be some backfield with Daniel's ability to run and throw the football, and then kneel. It's going to be real hard to contain those guys. All right, the best of the rest. I just want to throw in some other guys to keep an eye on. Taj Brooks had himself a huge season last season for Texas Tech. Big dude too, 230 pounds. I think he's going to be an intriguing player, of course. We spoke about Arizona, Jonah Coleman. We said quarterback. Wide receiver, we already mentioned. Here's the running back, Jonah Coleman. So he's getting better each year. Had almost 7 yards per carry last season. So he could be even better this year. West Virginia has 2 running backs, C.J. Donaldson Jr., Jaheim White. White did it as a freshman. Little dude, but he averaged 7.7 a carry. Donaldson's 238. And so they got the big guy. They got the quick little dude. So I think West Virginia, with Green a quarterback, he can run the football, as I said. So again, I think West Virginia's backfield is also going to be very dangerous. DJ Giddens out of Kansas State had over 1,200 yards rushing last year. Jaquindon Jackson, Utah always has running backs, especially big dudes. He's 6'2", 228. So keep an eye on him. And Cincinnati, Arizona State also have a couple of interesting running backs to keep an eye on. Corey Kiner, he had a 1,000-yard season. And Scatterboo, gotta like a running back by the name of Cam Scatterboo from Arizona State. So keep an eye on him as well. Any of those players, Hayden, that you want to keep an eye on the most?
Sure, absolutely. I know you mentioned Taj Brooks from Texas Tech. He's someone that's been on my radar for sure. Definitely of the best of the rest guys, he's going to be the number 1 guy that you're going to want to look at for sure.
Same with you, John Brooks?
Yeah, he's a kid that, I thought about talking about.
Okay. All right, let's now talk about wide receivers. And here we go. Arizona, Tetaroa McMillan. So, John, what's the ceiling on this kid? How good can this guy be?
Well, like I said, I'm careful not to rank him too high this early, but you look at this guy, and he highly productive, 90 catches, 1,400 yards, and 10 touchdowns. 6'5", 210. Very good route runner. I'd say his biggest strength is that size and his catch radius. He can go up and get the ball, but his quickness in and out of breaks for a big, tall kid is incredible. Just watching this guy play, I'm really, really impressed that we can go up and get the ball. He's dominant. He can track the football. And, can you imagine lining this guy up in the slot as a big slot receiver? And he has done that. Alignment versatile is the term people like to use. And I think the biggest thing is he's very fluid in and out of his cuts. He makes good route adjustments, and he reads coverage. He's got the ability to find the spots in zone coverage as well. So he's very good against both man-to-man and zone. He's good enough open. He's open field. He's also very good at making people miss in space as well. And that is another thing you don't really see often in really big, possession-type receivers, that they can make somebody miss in space, and he's got good run after the catch. Very smooth. I love the way he sinks his hips. And he can run all the routes. There isn't anything he can't do as far as that goes. The only question, I would say is that, does he have top-end speed? Can he consistently separate? Can he handle physical press coverage? Those would be the things that, I would want to take a look at, in terms of how he plays. Obviously very good against zone concepts, but that press man, is he going to be consistent against that? That's going to be the only thing, whereas you saw with your other big receiver last year that the Cardinals got, he did everything, as far as press coverage, nothing, it was elite in every area. We don't quite see that with McMillan, but we really, really like him and think he could be, one of the top receivers in the draft.
All right. A couple other guys you want to talk about, but first, Hayden, I'm going to ask you to go next and discuss these two kids from Iowa State. You want to talk about both of them, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. And again, mentioned Rocco Becht, the quarterback at Iowa State. Iowa State has been kind of hanging around, not really doing much the last couple of years, but you can't keep Matt Campbell down that long. You get the feeling that this could be a really good, sneaky year for Iowa State. These would be two big reasons.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Whenever we do these shows, I always like to do a little bit of research behind the scenes, check some of the teams who may have been middle of the pack in some sort of statistic, maybe even back end of the pack that could end up rising at some point, this season. Iowa State, we had already talked about Rocco Becht. He's going to be coming back after a phenomenal freshman season. The Iowa State passing game, even with Rocco Becht being as good as he was as a freshman, was still middle of the road in the Big 12, but they returned almost all the key pieces of their offense, including a trio of senior wide receivers. I'm going to talk about two of them, which were their two leading receivers from this past season. Jaden Higgins is one of them. He was my favorite of the two. He returns after transferring from Eastern Kentucky prior to the 2023 season, and he nearly eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving in 2023 to go along with 6 touchdowns. He measures in at 6'4", 210 pounds. So you're talking about a bigger type receiver, and he continued to improve as the season went on. He also capped off the season. He had 214 receiving yards in the bowl game last year against Memphis to finish off the season. He's used a lot on underneath routes. You could tell Iowa State just wanted to get the ball in his hands often and let him do the rest. Lined up a lot inside in the slot. They just gave him some easy completions and said, hey, you go make a play downfield and go get some yards, which was most of his utilization. He's also really good at stemming his route and setting up defenders with head jukes and stutter steps to win leverage, get around them. He has long strides in space, which help him separate with the ball in his hands. I also pulled this statistic. Let me make sure I get this right. It's from Pro Football Focus. He was targeted 166 times over the past 2 seasons, and he only had 2 drops. So you're talking about a guy who doesn't drop the football a whole lot. He's consistent with catching the ball, which is certainly important when you're projecting a guy to the next level. Now, the other leading receiver was Jalen Noel. He's going to be another focal point of their passing offense this year. The two complement each other really nicely. They have 2 different types of skill sets, which I'll get into. He was named a captain in 2023, had several productive seasons for the Iowa State offense. He's been there for a long time. His production has increased every single season, came to a head this past season. He had 820 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns as well, and he was second team all-conference honors at receiver. He was also honorable mention all Big 12 as a returner. He's had a lot of success as a returner, and he's going to add a lot of value there as well. Now you look a little bit, I know Dave likes to do this a lot, looking a little bit at his background, understanding his athletic profile and his makeup. He was also an all-conference track and field sprinter at the high school level, also a high jumper at the high school level as well. His track background definitely shows up on tape. He's really fast. Iowa State tried to get him in space and let him separate with his speed, tracks the ball really well, made some impressive catches throughout the season. I'm really excited about this trio of Becht and the 2 receivers. I think they could definitely elevate the Iowa State passing offense to new levels this next season. And like you said, with Matt Campbell, you never know with Iowa State. They've always been hanging around, and maybe this is the year that they break through.
And they also have a freshman tight end that had a nice start to his career, Benjamin Brahmer. He had 28 receptions and a couple of scores. So, yeah. But they usually have that really good bell cow, whether it's Breece Hall or David Montgomery. So I'm not sure if they've got that guy. But that's kind of what they normally rely on to have a balanced attack. So we'll keep an eye on that. By the way, how do they compare those 2 guys quickly to because they've had some really good receivers that have come out of that program over the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, Butler came out, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago. Hutchinson, of course, is now with Houston. Are they on that level? Not that either of those guys, of course, have produced in the NFL yet, especially Hutchinson, of course. But are they on that level?
Definitely, like I said, I really hate making projections and projecting rounds and stuff. I think Higgins has a chance to be better than all of those guys that she listed. I think Jalen Noel is a really good player as well. Definitely both guys that could be drafted next year, in my opinion.
Okay. Let's now talk about this next pair of receivers on the same team, John. They're at Colorado. We'll probably be talking about one of them next week, too. I'm sure we will. Or 2 weeks. Travis Hunter, of course, the dual threat for Colorado. And Will Shepard, the transfer from Vandy, who actually led Vandy the last 2 years in receiving, put up some pretty good numbers for the Commodores, a pretty weak program. But now he's going to get a chance with Sanders and Colorado, and especially with Hunter out there as well. Talk about Hunter and Shepard, and what's the difference between the two receivers there?
Well, Hunter's a speed guy. It's the number one thing. I mean, he's a burner. He's also a very, very good athlete. He has tremendous body control. He's a playmaker on both sides of the ball. Deion Sanders, was a two-way player at times in his NFL career. And there is a precedence for this. You go back a long ways, and you talk about guys like Night Train Lane and J.C. Caroline that went both ways, even when it was two-way football. And they didn't do it all the time. It wasn't something they did all the time. The most recent comp is Sanders, but there was another one, Roy Green, that played for the Cardinals in the 80s, that during that time he was a safety and played nickelback and also was a stellar receiver. Eventually they focused him on receiver. I see early in Hunter's career, he could be used both ways. I mean, Deion Sanders has been quoted as saying he's got to play both ways. He's that good. He's got too much value on both sides of the ball. So I could see a guy like that playing as a nickelback or a dime back as part of a sub package and playing primarily on offense, or vice versa, being a full-time corner and being a 15 to 20 play receiver package in certain sub packages that they have on offense. I don't think he would play 120 snaps a game, but I could see him. I definitely think a team should take a strong look at using him in packages with primarily offense or defense being where he plays. Now, as far as offense is concerned, his stats, 57 passes he caught for 721 yards. He showed some game-breaking skill. He's got quick feet. He can make people miss in space, and he's got blazing speed. Very good hands. He can go up and get the ball. He's got a good catch radius. He's the kind of a guy that, will make big plays. And on both sides of the ball, he's got that kind of value. He's got some things to work on if he's going to be a full-time receiver. His route running skills are there, but they've got to be more consistent. But his smooth athleticism and his ability to win at the catch point, he's got game changer potential.
And if you had to pick one or the other, where do you think he has a higher ceiling at, offense or defense?
I think let's let it play out. I think right now it's kind of like when they asked Deion about what contract do you want, and he said both, because he's playing baseball and football. That's kind of the same thing I would say with him. Let's let it play out. As a defensive coach, a good part of my career, obviously I would love to see this kid on defense. And I actually had a kid like that played for me at a smaller level of football that did the exact same thing. We focused him on defense. He was also a great returner. And he played about 15 snaps a game as a receiver and made some big plays. So if you put a gun to my head and said make a choice, that's what it would be. But I say let's let it play out before we make any decision there.
I think there's just a dime a dozen receivers nowadays. Not that he can't be special, but I just think there's just a limited amount of star corners. And I would rather see him at corner too. I think because again, I think he could be one of 20 top receivers, but he could be one of 5, top.
Yeah, I think he's got, and again, I stayed away from talking too much about the corner thing. That's coming up in another show. But he definitely, I think I like the idea of being a starting corner and maybe 15 snaps a game as a receiver.
Yeah, and you just got to keep him healthy. That's the thing. You don't want to overdo it. Him getting hurt last year was you don't want to see that. So,
but he is. If you put him at receiver, he would be elite.
Okay. All right. And by the way, with Shepard, again, Shepard led the team in receiving 2 years in a row. I know it's Vanderbilt, but this is going to be a great opportunity for him this year.
Yeah, and he's got good size. He's 6'2", 195. He accelerates in and out of his cuts very well. Very good ball tracker. He gets leverage. He wins the leverage battle against off coverage. He uses his body, very good body control, good route runner who gets in and out, like I said, gets in and out of those breaks quick. He can beat someone off the line with a real quick release and a quick cut. And, stemming that route is very, very good at that. Sudden, sharp steps. Very, very good winner initially in the route, as far as that goes. He's not explosive as far as that fifth gear, deep speed, but, that quickness and that ability to create separation initially in and out of a break with that first cut gives him an opportunity to be a very, very good, more than a possession receiver. Body control is phenomenal. His size will make him very good around the goal line. You get him down there in that 10-yard line, want to throw that ball and let him go up and get it because he's got a very good catch radius. He can get to the high point and take the ball away from a defensive back. He's going to win more of those battles than not. So that's the thing I like about him and looking at him on film.
All right. As far as best of the rest, just going to throw in some other players. Actually, there's two on Oklahoma State, Rashad Owens and Brennan Presley. So we talked about Bauman. We talked about Ollie Gordon, excuse me. Oliver's 2 weeks. So Oklahoma State should have a really exciting team this year. Lawrence Arnold, we talked about Nia. We talked about Daniels. They got a receiver. Yes, they do. Lawrence Arnold has led the team the last 2 years in receiving. He's got good size. Keep an eye on him. Florida, I know they've lost a lot of players, but they get one with Arizona State transfer Elijah Badger. So he could be a big part of the Florida Gators this year. I talked about Houston. I just mentioned their quarterback a little while ago. Well, they got two receivers with good size coming back this year, Samuel Brown and Joseph Manjack. Central Florida, another Central Florida kid, Hayden Kobe Hudson. Could be a big year for him. He had 900 yards receiving last year. So out of that group, any one of those, Hayden, that catches your eye the most?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple guys on there for sure. Definitely going to be looking at Lawrence Arnold from Kansas. He's going to have, as we talked about earlier, Jalen Daniels. It's going to help him out a lot at quarterback. On the flip side of that, we had Brennan Presley from Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had some problems at quarterback last year. I know that his name is slipping my mind. I think he had 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. So definitely teetering between, a productive quarterback. But he was a guy that, racked up most of their production as a receiver. I think he had 1,000 yards or really close to 1,000 yards receiving. So someone I'll keep an eye on.
All right. Now it's time to talk tight ends. And we have one from Texas Tech and one from TCU. So, Hayden, let's start with your boy from TCU, transfer from Baylor, Drake Dabney.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Coop and I were talking last night about the depth of tight end in the Big 12 this year. They're really hitting a whole lot of guys in the Big 12 this year. Now, there are a couple, and that's the guys that we'll talk about here. Both of us thought about talking about Brant from Utah, but one of the guys that I'll be talking about is Drake Dabney from TCU. TCU brought in a number of transfers this offseason. Dabney's going to be one of the ones who's going to have the biggest impacts, in my opinion, in his first season as a Horned Frog. As Ourlads currently has it on our depth charts, we expect that 6 of their 11 starters on offense are going to be incoming transfers. So they're going to be looking for some guys to walk in the door immediately and make an impact. Dabney likely to be one of those guys. He comes over from fellow Big 12 school, Baylor, where he broke the single season receiving yards record by a tight end in 2023. Honorable mention all-conference guy. And this was all after coming off of a season-ending injury. He broke his fibula in 2022. So when you put that into perspective, even more impressive. I did find a really interesting statistic on him and about the Baylor football program as well. In week 1 against Texas State, he had 101 receiving yards this past season. He became the first tight end for Baylor to eclipse 100 yards in a game since Ken Hodge. When did Ken Hodge play? It was in 1964. So it's been almost, 60 years since a tight end for Baylor had over 100 yards receiving. So, for a Baylor offense who faced some struggles throughout the season, he was definitely one of the bright spots for their offense. He played a lot in line, asked to block some edge defenders. He's got solid speed to stretch the defense vertically, good technique as a blocker. He just kind of really lacks that strength to get significant push off the line and maintain leverage. Defenders are able to detach fairly easy, but he does have decent technique. As I said, he's going to be a guy that, like I said, should walk in the door and be one of their top receiving targets at TCU. Excited to see what he does this season.
Yeah, he's going to replace Wiley. And, boy, Wiley sure ended up at the perfect spot, didn't he?
Yeah, no kidding. He got big shoes to fill for sure.
Oh, yeah. But he'll be able to take his time. So, anyway, we'll see how Dabney does taking over the job there at tight end for TCU. Okay, next up, Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech. John, what do you like about him?
I'll tell you what, I think I emailed you. And by the way, Hayden, great job talking about 1964, going back in football history. I love it. And when I emailed you about him saying that it was slim pickings, and this guy might not be, I think I might have been wrong about this kid. I watched film on him, and I want to tell you, I'm impressed. Connors transferred to Texas Tech from Arizona State, where he played 3 years. He was also a freshman at Oklahoma. So this is his third school. He's a big kid, 6'4", 265 pounds, 270 pounds. His hometown is in Texas. He's had 74 receptions in his 3 seasons and 68 of those over the last 2 seasons. So, he's been relatively productive for a tight end. And Arizona State hasn't exactly been a great team the past couple of years. But, in watching film, some things I've been impressed about him. He's lined up at wideout. He's also lined up as a wildcat quarterback. He's very, very athletic for that size. He's got a knack for getting open. He finds soft spots in the zone, and he can settle. The thing I really like to see is a receiver run a vertical route, anticipate the coverage, and then adjust the route. Make a sight adjust and find an open spot. He can beat man cover. I saw a rep where he, up the field running a corner route from a slot position because he's lined up in the slot as a receiver at times, and make a great catch on the sideline and then make a quick cut and made a DB miss in space and score a touchdown. So he can make people miss. He can make cuts that are wide receiver-like. I would, the films I watched, very, very impressed. Accelerates into and out of a route. He's not the greatest blocker in the world at this point. He's more of a receiver. He's more of a large tight end that, is going to have to learn a little bit more about position blocking if we're going to use him like that. But he's been more focused on being a receiver as he's played some receiver, other than just tight end. But, he's a big kid with a great catch radius, and I think he's got a chance to be a decent football player. He's going to be one to watch at Texas Tech to see what that goes like. Don't know if he's the next Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce, but hey, let's watch this kid because to me he's very interesting.
Yeah, he put up good numbers a couple of years ago, and now, by the way, I mentioned one of those quarterbacks was Morton, so he'll be the one throwing the football to Conyers. So we'll keep an eye on that combo. You did mention Brant Keithy out of Utah, and he's a 6th-year senior. He's got the big injury, the torn ACL he's coming off of. And without the injury, you get the feeling this guy maybe one of the top 3 or 4 tight ends in the class. So it's all about the recovery because he's been around for so long. Matter of fact, you date back all the way to 2019 when he had 17.7 yards of reception, 34 catches, 602 receiving. Had another big year in 2021. So it's been a few years since he's been that productive with the injury and all. Again, I don't think this kid's anything more than a receiver. He's not going to block for you. So what do you think? Hayden, do you think this kid, I mean, the main thing, like I mentioned, is just going to see if this kid can stay healthy, right?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And you talk about him being a 6th-year senior. He was actually there in 2018 playing games for him. He's going to be a 7th-year senior.
Wow.
And you're talking about a guy that's, coming off of 2 major injuries. He missed both of the last 2 seasons. So number one, if you're looking at him as a pro prospect at tight end, certainly the age factor is going to play in. But number two, I mean, if you're an NFL team looking to invest a draft pick into a player, he's a 7th-year senior, and he's missed both of the last 2 seasons. It's definitely going to leave some question marks. We're going to have to see what he does this season. But if you go back and watch his tape, 2019, 2020, 2021, he was a really good player, picked up a lot of accolades, or accolades, I should say. And we're just going to have to see what he does this season, if he can stay healthy and if he can get back to the level he was playing at before the injuries.
Yeah, he's only 6'2", 230. So it's going to have to be one of those, players that you find a specific role for. But hopefully he stays healthy, has a big year. And Cameron Rising also, of course, coming back from an injury. Couple quick things. You mentioned that quarterback for for Oklahoma State who had 15-14. That was Alan Bauman, by the way. So I mentioned him. He's in his 7th year. And Hakeem Butler, I mentioned him with Hutchinson at Iowa State. He was the Offensive Player of the Year for the UFL this year. So interesting couple of notes there. All right, let's wrap up with the offensive line, John. And you got a couple of tight ends you want to talk about. One from Arizona. So Arizona, it's not just about the skill positions. They've got a tackle you like, and another one from West Virginia as well.
Yeah, they're tackles, not the tight ends. So big kids, both of them. Jonah Savanea. I think I pronounced that correctly. Did I? I don't know, but I think I did. I was working on it. But anyway, he is a very talented player. He's a little bit young last year, so he's and he got schooled by some very good edge rushers in the Pac-12 at times. But he's got some right and left tackle experience. I mean, he played opposite Morgan last year, who was drafted early by the Packers. And he's got ideal strength, ideal length, and very, very good. I think his length and his wingspan is going to show up good. He's got a good anchor, as far as his ability in pass pro. He plays with knee bend, which I love. That's something I really look for in a tackle. But unfortunately, he does get high. He doesn't always play with knee bend. So when I see it, I love it. But when he gets high, that pad level gets up, he struggles, and he starts holding. So there are some concerns. But his anchor is good. His punch and mirror is reasonably good, and he's powerful. He's a powerful player. He's now been a 3-year starter. Again, I think 2 years ago was when Latu gave him a lot of trouble, but he was much better this past season. But still, against some of those elite players, he wasn't the greatest. Very good athleticism, and he's got good range, in terms of his ability to punch and mirror and range to the outside and ride an edge rusher outside. He's got to learn to keep his feet active all the time, and he's going to have to handle those counter moves and not lunge at defenders and grab. He had some holding penalties. To me, he's an upside player that's got the qualities you look for in a tackle, and he's got the strength, the power. He's got the tools, but he's got some things he's got to work on. His angles on that punch and mirror, he's got to be more focused on that, so guys can't counter inside on him. But the physical attributes are there.
All right. And then there's a couple of guards. I just want to close this out for our video this week. One is just a player that I wanted to mention as best of the rest. That's Michael Ford Jr. from Kansas. I think he's going to be, we just talked about Kansas with the skill position players. So they have a really good interior alignment to keep an eye on Michael Ford Jr. But Hayden, you wanted to talk about Luke Kandra, offensive guard from Cincinnati.
Yes, absolutely. I actually had the opportunity to go watch Cincinnati in person this past season. They're not too far from where I live. Wanted to go check them out. And Cincinnati was a 3-win team last year. So as you can imagine, there were some difficulties in watching them. Sometimes it was a little difficult to watch. However, they had a plethora of talent in the trenches, both on the offensive side and on the defensive side. They had Juwan Briggs, who was one of my favorites from last year, who was drafted, as I said, on the defensive line. Flipped over to the offensive side. Luke Handler was a guy that stood out to me as well. He's one of those guys that we're going to have to keep an eye on as we enter the 2024 season. I'm expecting to hear his name a little bit more as we get closer to the season. He actually finished this past season as a third-team All-American, first-team All-Big 12 selection in Cincinnati's first year up in the Big 12. While Cincinnati, like I said, they only won 3 games this past year, there were still some positives. They were 5th in the nation in rushing yards per game, and a big part of that was Kendra opening up massive gaps for the ball carrier. He's a mauler. He's always looking for extra work in pass protection, knocking defenders off their feet. He's agile in space and zone scheme, and as a puller, he plays with good leverage with active hands. His functional strength, it's solid. It's not incredible. It's not something that you're going to write home about. Sometimes shows difficulty moving linemen against their will in zone and gap scheme, but he doesn't give up ground often, and that's what's really important, especially in pass protection. Like I said, Cincinnati, that offense that's trying to rebound, like we talked about, a lot of positives, 5th in the nation in rushing yards, and he's going to be a big part of that in their rebuild moving forward.
Before I wrap up, either you
I had
guys
know him too that I wanted to mention. Kid from West Virginia.
Sure.
Offensive tackle. He is the quintessential knee bender, and he the only thing with that knee bend, sometimes he overextends, but this kid might be one of the better tackles in the conference, in the Big 12. He's 6'6", 317. He allowed 0 quarterback hits and 0 sacks this past year, which you don't see that too often. So this guy's talented. He's not playing against the best talent last year all the time, but he is solid with, and there's some weaknesses. I won't get into that, but this is a good football player.
Yeah, and again, we talked about the running attack they're going to have, the running quarterback they have. West Virginia, good team to keep an eye on, offensively at least. We'll find out if we're going to talk about any of their players on defense next week. Before I wrap it up, any pivots, any centers worth mentioning, anybody at all that you think could be, a day 1 or day 2 specifically player in the draft next year, guys?
I'm not sure about at center. There was another player that I did want to mention actually over at Baylor while I was watching Drake Dabney. He actually plays out at offensive tackle. I noticed him. His name is Alvin Ibasele, I believe is how it's pronounced. He's only going to be a redshirt sophomore this year, 1 year of playing experience. He's a big ball of clay. He's 6'6", 315 pounds. He's got an excellent frame. He's an excellent athlete. He's just someone that stood out for me when I was watching the tape over and over again, just mauling guys. Excellent mover, as I said. He looks like an NFL player from an early age. As I said, though, he's going to be a big ball of clay. He still has a lot of work to do. But if you're looking at projecting a guy for the future, he's going to be one of those guys you're going to want to look at. Now at center, like I said, not 100% sure. Haven't taken a look at the centers yet. Still somewhere that I need to look.
There's some more tackles too. You mentioned Logan Brown, right, Greg?
No. I mentioned Michael Ford.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, Logan Brown's a big tackle from Kansas. He's a little slow-footed, but he is powerful. And I think might be a candidate to be a guard, even though he's played tackle. Daryl Simmons from Iowa State is a powerful upper body guard. He's raw in technique and lacks great footwork. These are more down the line guys. Okay. I don't think the Big 12 right now, they're projecting a lot of great offensive linemen, but there are some guys. Brian Walden at Arizona State's another one that's kind of an up and comer. So there are some guys that that we could talk about.
Okay. All right, so that's going to be it for offense for the Big 12. And again, we're going to be back in 2 weeks to talk about the defensive side. I know Colin Oliver is going to be a big part of our discussion for sure. It seems like we've been talking about him because I think didn't he break out as a true freshman, I believe, for Oklahoma State? I know how rare that is. I don't know if he was a second-year freshman or not, but I just remember hearing about him immediately and thinking, wow, this kid's doing this at this stage of his development. He's going to be something else. So we're going to talk a lot about Oliver, of course, and more defensive studs to keep an eye on in the Big 12 for the 2024 season and potentially for the 2025 NFL draft. Guys, appreciate it. Thanks for your time as always, and have a great 4th of July.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
You got it. And also want to there you go. I just want to remind everybody to subscribe, like, and share. And don't forget the 2023 draft review guide. It's out and available. So order it right now. You'll have it in your mailbox within a couple of days. So we'll see you in 2 weeks when I can show you the 2024 guide right here on the Ourlads Football YouTube channel.